2, 1. This is ridiculous. Okay, welcome back, everybody who's dribbling in. Next presentation is from the Multibeam Advisory Committee. Kevin Jerram in charge.
Thank you, Jules. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see everyone in person this year and also remotely. Hello. I'm Kevin Jerram. I'm with the Center for Coastal and Ocean Mapping at the University of New Hampshire, and I work with Paul Johnson. Gonna go.
Oh, here. The easiest thing to do is to go like.
I work with Paul Johnson also at UNH CCOM and Vicki Franey at Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory at Columbia University on the Multibeam Advisory Committee. This group has been around for just over 10 years, and thanks to Jim, we're in a 5-year funding grant cycle right now. And it was the MAC was established to help the fleet improve and maintain data quality with the Multibeam systems. We do that through standardizing system performance testing, publishing those results, providing remote and onboard support, mostly remote lately for obvious reasons. The tools we use to do that have changed over the years, but the general approach is the same. Try to standardize testing, try to share lessons learned. We have a website where we host technical reports and resources, sea acceptance reports, quality testing, noise testing reports. We host reports from non-UNOLS ships as well. It's just nice to learn from other fleets. And we have Python-based assessment tools and other resources like vessel survey guidance that's all available on our website. We encourage you to look at that, provide feedback. We'd love to update that with whatever feedback you can provide to make it useful. We have a help desk email. You can email us anytime. That helps us track requests from the vessels, whether that's looking at a new noise issue, planning quality testing, or thinking longer term about new installations or upgrades. We also have started a ocean mapping community wiki that we'll talk about in a little bit. That's a joint partnership with some NOAA folks, Shannon Hoy, and Saildrum Industry, Colleen Peters. So it's a nice group that we've assembled there to open up the lines of communication among users of these systems. So in the US academic fleet, we've got 11 vessels, 1 icebreaker, 15 Kongsberg systems. These are deep water systems, anywhere from 30 to 120 kilohertz, sorry, 12 kilohertz to 120 kilohertz. No shallow water Kongsberg systems right now, only Reason. That may be changing, we don't know. There are RCRVs under construction, of course, and those will also have 2040s. We really focus on the Kongsberg models for obvious reasons here, just they dominate the installations in the fleet. Here's a quick overview of the ships that have Kongsberg systems and a rough overview of where they might be in their life cycle, when we last visited them or provided any other sort of support. In green, you'll see that we have visited about half the fleet in the last 2 seasons, and the rest are probably in need of at least a little bit of check-in here and there for a calibration or some noise testing, sanity check. The recent installs are bold or underlined here. There are several that are italicized. Those are pending replacement, or we need to start talking about a plan for the next couple of years with those systems. And we have a breakout session on Thursday. We'll get into some more detail about that. For system performance testing, this has been more or less standardized in our approach. Every ship is different, of course. Every window of opportunity to do this is different, but we try to follow a fairly standard order. And that starts with geometry review and configuration. If you don't have your sensor offsets right, it's kind of hopeless. And we deal with a calibration or patch test. We get into some noise testing, make sure the vessel itself isn't impacting the multibeam too heavily. And then once that's done, we can get into some more detailed swath accuracy testing, coverage testing, trying to establish what is the real achieved coverage of your multibeam versus depth under different operating circumstances, speeds, if you have other systems pinging at the same time. We encourage direct impedance monitoring for the arrays. There are built-in self-tests that can provide a proxy for element failure in the arrays or other cabling issues, but there's no substitute for direct measurement of those impedance values at the element in the array. And we'll talk about that as well a little bit later and then in the breakout session. We're trying to offer some qualitative water column assessment. How decent does your water column data look? Is it, do you see rings from other ship noise or other interference? And there's a growing demand for backscatter products from these systems. Of course, when they change mode, they change pulse parameters. There's a lot of effort that goes into normalizing or not quite calibrating, but at least normalizing across different modes of these systems. And then we put it all in a report. Here's in this image is an example of an overview of a series of test sites. This is something Paul put together for the Nautilus, but we can use them for any other ships. And we have a growing database of proven test sites that make it really easy for planning. When it comes to planning, we try to follow an established checklist, again, keeping those stages in some sort of priority order, starting with the geometry review, working all the way through your options for test phases that could be worked into your cruise plan. So we'll try to work around other activities on board, take into account what deviations you might be able to make from your transit route. And this is a collaborative document. It's just a Google Doc with links to waypoints and settings documents that we can update for your specific installation and taking into account what has been going on with your installation lately. So here's an example of the Rafael checklist from their SAT after the midlife. And on the right, some follow-up to the Atlantis SAT. So that was a short SAT window last year. We did some follow-up recently, and that was on the fly, collaborative. And I think we got some interesting follow-up out of that. One of the other resources that I harp on every year, guidance for your vessel survey, getting your sensor offsets in. Usually we see good surveys, but sometimes the reporting of those surveys leads to confusion and errors in configuration that make it almost impossible to fix later. So you can unwittingly collect compromised data for a long time. And when that happens, we trace it back frequently to not necessarily a survey error, but a reporting error or an ambiguity in how it was translated into the multi-beam installation. This is a recurring issue, not just in the UNOLS vessels, but with all the vessels we work with through UNH in Colombia and other private vessels that we occasionally have the chance to work with. This is a recurring theme, and the cost of collecting that data is astronomical compared to the cost difference between a good survey and a great survey. So that's something we'll harp on over and over. We'll also talk about that in the breakout. We also have been putting together these Python assessment tools. We use them in our processing, looking at swath performance, and there are some other options here. These are available freely, they're open source. You can download them, take them to sea, run your data through them, find problems, give us feedback. Tell us how these tools can be more useful for you. The first couple tools here are a file trimmer. In the early days of the pandemic, trying to get data to shore before some of the ships had broader bandwidth in their systems, we were able to make a file trimmer that strips out unnecessary datagrams. You can sometimes get an 80% reduction in file size, makes it easier to get to shore for us. Or if you have other people on shore who want to do processing, you can send them data a little bit more easily. We have a built-in self-test plotter that helps you track your BISTs. Hopefully you do them every cruise, and you can look at your history of hardware health. You can look at vessel noise characteristics. For an example here, we've got on the right, the same EM124 system installed on 2 different ships, and those 2 platforms have vastly different noise characteristics in terms of noise amplitude versus speed, noise versus heading relative to the prevailing seas. One of these ships is loud going into the seas, as you might expect. The other one's actually louder with the swell on the stern, which was unexpected. Again, here you can track your hardware health over time. It's not a replacement for direct impedance monitoring, but in this case, there's 10 years worth of this, and you can look at trends over time, see if there's an early indication of array failure. One of the other tools here is the swath coverage plotter. You can take a big cruise data set, dump it in here, and plot your achieved coverage versus depth. You can color it by ping mode or swath mode or pulse form, a couple different options there. You can archive those trends, compare performance of a new installation to your old one, or compare to another vessel. Here's an example of two ships crossing the Puerto Rico Trench, the Okeanos Explorer, the EM304 Mark II, and the Atlantis EM124. So thanks to both of those ships for coordinating that on short notice. Really cool apples to apples comparison here of what those two systems achieve down to 7,000 meters or close to 8,000 meters. You can also look at data rates here. And recently we've added an option to track and search through acquisition parameters. So if you discover something might not have been right, but you don't know when that configuration changed, you can search back through data and find that. Once systems are all calibrated, we can do swath accuracy testing. We have reference surfaces that exist that are trusted. You can just run cross lines and then run the reference surface and the cross line through here, get a sense of what your performance is as a standalone multibeam or with other systems synchronized. You can test different ship operating modes, see what the impact is of speed or noise. We also work with NOAA on the sound speed manager. So this is a popular piece of software, and I'll just say that there's been some recent additions for World Ocean Atlas 2018, enhancements to the server mode, which is super useful if you're transiting, you don't have the people or the resources for XBTs or CTBs for sound speed control. Giuseppe, who runs this, is always releasing new versions. So there's quick turnaround there, feedback is welcome. Since the last RVTEC, we visited 4 ships remotely in the UNOLS fleet. We were involved in a number of other projects outside of MAC funding that I think are useful to mention just because they feed back into what the MAC does. So we worked on those assessment tools. Paul is working on an SAT, QAT site database. So some sort of web interface where you can go in and look at all the existing proven calibration sites or reference surfaces where you might be able to run cross lines or swath coverage test lines that have worked really well in the past. Vicky has been working on GMRT tiling package, which is a nice piece of software you can bring out, and as you're transiting or collecting data, you can compare it to the existing grids and see, are there some systemic problems with what you're collecting, sound speed issues, that kind of stuff. In other non-MAC testing, we were involved with the Ocean Explorer. We did some work, as Don mentioned, with the DRIX autonomous mapping vessel off the Nautilus. Paul went out with the Nautilus for their QAT. We have been involved with the Sail Drone Surveyor since their sea acceptance testing last year and provided we've had lots of communication with them over the last couple of years. And I want to say thank you to Colleen Peters again for pushing very hard with SIS5 updates for Sail Drone Surveyor, asking for a lot of really useful features and bug fixes. And thank you to Kongsberg for responding to that. Same with Okeanos Explorer. We've had a lot of good conversations about challenges, and I think that what we learned from those other non-MAC, non-UNOLS platforms comes right back, and we can use that. We should be using that. Some other takeaways from the field from the last season. I alluded to this earlier. There are some things that just keep coming up, and one of them, this is a non-UNOLS ship, but there was a 7-meter waterline error in configuration that was actually accepted by the manufacturer during installation and sea acceptance trials. So that was, that's a big deal. Thankfully, you can catch it. That's one of those things you can fix later on in post-processing. But I bring it up not to shame any particular ship, but just to say it is a recurring concern. And in this case, this was a phenomenal vessel survey and report. So even with the best surveys and reports, it's possible to interpret them correctly.
Okay, how about that one?
I like that better, but
Okay, well, hustle.
okay. Thanks to Ethan for helping us understand a little bit more about the limits of this and the value of routine impedance monitoring. We'll get into that a little bit more deeply in the breakout session. So I'm going to skip that for right now. What's next? RCRB SAT planning is underway. There are a number of systems that are late life cycle. We need to start talking about replacement and getting a plan together for those. Looks like the formatting got a little screwed up here, but we want to hear from you about what you're planning. If you've removed and reinstalled hardware, if you've got noise issues, just send us an email, machelp@unols.org. We'd love to chat with you about that. And as I've mentioned, we're seeing some similar things across the UNOLS fleet, the government ships we work with, the industry ships we work with, and we have decided as a group with partners from NOAA and SailsRun to form an ocean mapping community wiki. So we will talk more about this. I would just want to be clear from the beginning, this is meant to be a platform for discussion and troubleshooting. It will grow in whatever way the user base wants it to grow, like any other wiki. At a minimum, we're going to try to make it useful for us on the Mac. And we think that'll be useful for some of the other partners we have through UNH. It's not an SOP repository. It is not a competitor to ocean best practices. It's not a replacement for manufacturer guidance. But we want this to be not an authority on its own, but a place where you can point to the authorities that have those correct resources. And we've already had some nice wins, some little victories with troubleshooting, where we've had almost real-time conversations across ships in different fleets trying to solve similar problems. And even though those solutions weren't the same in those cases, having the conversation was extremely useful. There's documentation there for how to use the assessment tools. Again, this can grow in any way that the user base wants to. It's hosted on GitHub to take advantage of their wiki functionality, their troubleshooting functions and issues tracking. And people like GitHub, so you can link easily to other repositories. And I think I also just want to mention we can have some fun with it too. So we've made a little top 10 reasons why we can't have nice pings. So our breakout will be Thursday at 3 p.m. We'd love to get your feedback on the wiki, hear about the challenges you're having. And I'm being told we're done.
I'm going to I have one question for Luba, and all the other questions have to do with the breakout session, because we use of the numbers. Have you seen TLS version issues with Nomad's updates in Sunsteep?
Paul? I don't know. We'll get back to you.
Yeah, the answer to that was not sure. Okay, so
Thank
next up.
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks, Kevin.
Next up is Masako Tominaga talking about the potential fields pooled equipment, PFP. Here, stand on the dot.
Standing on the dot.
Yes, stand on the camera. And then. Not the microphone. Hold it really close to you. There you go.
Can you hear me okay? I typically talk very loud, so.
Oh.
Good morning, everybody. Some of you I can identify even with a mask, but hello, great to see you. My name is Masako Tominaga. Probably many of you saw my name through the PFP internal at hui.edu emails flying around, mostly so far generated by our Professor Dan Fornari, our beloved leadership of this facility. So first of all, we would like to dedicate this year's update to Mr. Randy Herr. He had been our go-to person, not only the UNOLS vessels, but from the defense, as he was a former Navy officer, and then one of the working dictionary of BGM-3 marine gravimeter. He passed last month, and just the deepest condolences and then for our loss. Now, without Randy, five of us from Woods Oceanographic is trying to keep his legacy going and then also maintain the health of marine gravimetry on the UNOLS vessels and beyond. So I am taking over Dan's role as a chief scientist of PFPE, and Tom Lanigan, maybe many of you already closely worked with him. He's a mechanical engineer at Woods Hole, and he is a lead support engineer for PFPE. Steve, who's an electrical engineer, is the backup of Tom, and we recruited mid-career data geophysicist Jasmine Zhu. She is specifically dedicated her time to consult and also report the quality of data from the new meter, which I will introduce soon for the community and agencies. And of course, Dan will be ONR and NGA relations advisor for us. So we'll capitalize on his corporate memory going forward. Okay, what's our mission? Our mission is basically help operating and maintaining potential field equipment, namely gravimeters and magnetometers on UNOLS vessels and a couple more vessels as upon request to obtain science grade data. We are serving for the science so that we do care about the quality of raw data and also the a lot of effort behind that to create quality raw data. Many of you perhaps unhappy about time you had to dedicate to do the gravity tie in the tropic port after entire day moving other science equipment. But those tie is the essential effort to have a quality raw data for these meters. So we really, really thank you all for that effort. And we do know it's not trivial. I've done that many enough times. And then some of my students almost cried in Guam. So, you know, it's like, not yet, because it takes time. Okay, so, a little bit of, sorry, the format distortion here, but why important? Who cares about marine gravity data? It is not looking shiny as a multibeam. It just comes as just line data on the display. And then currently the BGM-3 marine gravimeter gives you a lot of maintenance pain. Why do we care? Why do we need this data? One way to answer the question is, of course, well, science needs it. Geophysicists would like to us, to see us collecting this data because it's important, right? Why it's important? So, I presented this last year that gravity data from your vessel are knowledge, and the knowledge is our power to address 21st century Earth and ocean science questions, national security, resource, and hazard management. To do it, yes, the health of the instrument, such as properly working gravimeters, and data density are the two key points. Oh, really? So I wanted to be a little bit more creative this year to convince you how this is important and why do we care. All right, so we have an excellent working partner. They're an organization called National Geospatial Agency. Some of our BGM-3 gravimeters, their parts, we really get their help basically salvaging these vintage pieces from their warehouse. And then generously, they have this loaning program of meters. So one of their AGU presentation last year highlighted how they would like to basically communicate with the science oceanographers, geophysicists, to utilize their resource to get more data, the gravimeter data. The purpose of gravimeter data is not just getting free air gravity anomalies. That's for science purpose to do some inversion model to get the ocean crust structures. But the fundamental importance, I think, comes into basically we're feeding every nautical mile data to understand the shape of Earth. Do you remember the term geoid? That is the estimated shape of Earth with respect to, as you know, that map datum, WGS 84. So knowing the shape of Earth is important for navigational purpose, flight path, whatever the locations you navigate in the less charted part of the ocean, etc. So not only for oceanographic research, beyond scholarly community, we share your data. So every single nautical mile you sail with marine gravimeter, BGM3, DGS, doesn't matter. The quality of those data are important because beyond the NSF, beyond the oceanographic community, will use those data to understand the shape of Earth. How can we make more fundamental than this? So I think that this is a very important point that we are using NSF-funded, ONR-funded national asset to keep creating variable data for the entire community. And that's what our funding goes. So most of the nitty-gritty of updates, I would like to share those pains and gains during our breakout session, which will be 3 p.m. today, I think. Yeah, 3 p.m. today in room 106, just across the hallway. So 2022, we have been operating this vintage BGM3 gravimeters that you have to babysit almost every day, and a little bit dealing with the finicky electronics. Sikriak, Rafael, Ride, Thompson, Langsas, Kilomoana, Armstrong, Atlantis, and Palmer and Healy. We thank our partner at University of Alaska Fairbanks, Barney Coakley, who is extremely meticulous about the operating and helping the BGM3 data collection on Healy. And then those purple highlighted letters, Rafael, Thompson, Atlantis, Palmer, PFP and NSF, and one NGA meter. We are trying to basically graduate BGM3 meter from UNOLS globals. And started with Thompson in 2021. That gave not only for us many lessons, but also the manufacturer to tune these meters properly to accommodate sea state that all of your vessels usually go through. So it was interesting that working with the motor manufacturer whose major clients are industry vessels, their conception of dynamic range due to the ship motion was very calm than what we usually deal with. So that was both sides of the learning curves. But since then, thanks to Robert Kamphaus and SSSG team led by Lauren here, UW, Thompson is basically operating both new DGS meter and the BGM3. We're going to present some of the data and again, pains and gains during the breakout session. So please come by and discuss with us. And we just installed the new meter on the Rafael, and they are doing the, I hope, the Multibeam trial right now, I think. Yeah.
Pretty much probably right now.
Yeah, right now. So kudos to them. It was a very, very quick installation effort. And we are now assessing the data to see if the new meter is working with respect to the BGM3. Atlantis, we are still working on the properly installed DGS and then getting the science grade data. Hopefully before we will, right now, their new meter had a problem. So it's at the manufacturer, bring back to the Charleston focal, hopefully before they set sail to West Coast and then Pacific toward the end of this year. And we will install this one new meter on Palmer in December before they set sail for the big geophysics expeditions in Antarctica. Thanks to Jim Hollick's program, that made us basically possible to communicate with Palmer and help them to best operate marine gravimeter during the geophysics heavy season coming up. So again, more on this new meter practices during the breakout session. And the last updates bits is that after the COVID years, finally the Hui campus was open for visitors. National Geospatial Agency geodetic team. These are the team of people who basically travel with absolute gravimeter, which you can see on that picture, to recalibrate and then resurvey those little plates you find on dock and then sometimes in the building. So basically that top picture showing a part of the Island dock of Woods Hole, they're making sure that the value we have on file, you saw those values on your, PFP laptops, drop-down menu. We have the reasonable accuracy of that number. So that's what they are revalidating. And they have also reestablished one more little gravity reference point in the Quisette campus. So we have two campuses, one is waterfront and then one is up on the hill, and we have a new building there. So why not just, drilling into the new building's floor and then make this new reference point? Basically, the director of the building is, why not? So yeah, we have the two absolute gravity reference points on campus with some elevation changes. So that will probably help their side of the research, and then hopefully some of the future science projects can capitalize on this little yet important resource we established. So that's it. Any questions?
That looks like Lance.
Yes.
I've got so many.
Oh my
come to
gosh,
the
come
breakout.
to the breakout, please. I'm ready to be grilled this afternoon. So
I guess the sort of wide range are there any plans to move the PFPE laptops to a more recent version, or the Ubuntu version is an old one?
Masako,
So is there-
come back, answer from here.
Is there time, like any plans to move that software over to a more recent version?
Can you repeat the question for the audience?
Yeah. So for the audience on the Zoom, the question was, Well, PFP laptop Ubuntu version is so old. Do we have any plan to actually modernize that whole thing? The short answer is yes. When? We don't know yet. Thank you for bringing that up because now I would like to officially think about the plan and timeline, probably within our 2023 plan, operation plan. Is that okay, Jim? Thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to corner you. Okay, that's good. Yeah, okay. See you all in the breakout session. Thank you very much. Good to see you.
That's great. Thank you. So now Rafael is going to talk to us about the rolling deck to repository. There you go. There you go. You can either hit enter or click that thing to make it go to the next slide.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
I am not Emily Miller, just for starters, if that wasn't obvious. But I'm just briefly going to go over the Rolling Deck to Repository program, or R2R for short. Currently where we're at and just some new developments. If I could just briefly have the R2R team just kind of just wave. You can stand up or wave or however.
All right.
Yeah, yeah. They're great. They're a great team. I'm really happy to be working with them. I'm pretty new, so I've been learning a lot from them. And the team is composed of individuals from Lamont, FSU, Scripps, and Hui. And well, this should be pretty brief, but I'm sure everyone will have a lot of questions, so we'll see how it goes. R2R's mission is to serve as an intermediary between the operator, some of you here, and data synthesis, NCEI, and the general public. We receive the raw data and metadata from you, the operators, try to give some feedback or best practices, and receive some feedback and best practices that you guys think we should adopt. And once we have that raw data and metadata, we will send that to, like I said, the data synthesis, NCEI for long-term archive, and also the user. And they also will report back best practices as well. We want to make sure that your data that you send us is well documented, archived, and made available to the public as quickly as possible. So we thank you and your help in making that possible. And the data you contribute is from all around the globe. This is just an example of cruise tracks for the data we've received. And we want to make, again, we have a lot of data that we receive and we try to efficiently get it served to the public as quickly as possible. As far as cruise number and data volumes that we receive, this chart will just show the number of cruises we've received over time. And the gray line in the middle there is the total terabytes of the distros that we're receiving. There were some pretty important events going on in 2020 and 2021. So that kind of explains why there's that drop in the data. But even despite that, we're still seeing an increasing amount of terabytes in the distros we're receiving. And just a small note, these are all for all funded cruises. And in the blue, you're seeing that all the cruise types are science vessels, which is our default setting, unless the operator, tell us to change that. But we have different classes of cruises that we know in our metadata. And as far as 2022, we have a low amount of cruises relative to, we're in the middle of completing the ingestion for cruises, and we're also waiting to receive data from the operators as well. So again, we always want to communicate with the operators and you all and make sure that you're getting that data as soon as possible, that we're getting that data as soon as possible, which kind of leads into this idea of the lag between the end of the cruise and once the data and metadata arrives at R2R. And just for starters, maybe for some of us who don't, some of you who are too familiar with the R2R program, by metadata, we're referring to the minimum amount of information about the cruise that we need to create an entry. So think like cruise ID, ports, start end dates, chief scientist. that's the minimum amount of data we need to create an entry and then allow it to proceed with the rest of the ingestion process. On the left, you're seeing the number of days between the end of the cruise and the ingestion of that metadata. So over time, you're seeing that dip in 2020 and 2021. And the red line is the average number of days between the end of the cruise and its ingestion in R2R, which has been decreasing steadily, which is great. We really love seeing the faster we receive that metadata, the faster we can proceed with the process of getting the data archived and served to the public. That being said, 2022 got about an average of about 100 days, which is a vast improvement, but that's still 100 days we need before we can start the data archival process. So again, we want to work with you guys and try to get that lag time as low as humanly possible. And then that leads into the right side, where we're looking at the number of days between the end of the cruise and the arrival of the distro at R2R. So again, the distro means the cruise data. And again, great, we're seeing a huge dip in between the end of the cruise and the arrival of the distro at R2R. And we want to thank you guys for making that possible. And we want to try to figure out any way we can help you make that, get that number even lower. The arrival of that data to R2R does vary by vessel. Some have a little more trouble getting the data to us.
Sorry. Got it. Go for it.
Okay.
There was nothing you did.
Thank God. So again, like I was saying, that arrival time does vary by vessel. Despite that, we are seeing still a decrease in the average days it takes per year. And it's really important to just emphasize that the data can't be properly archived until we receive it. And we do offer multiple methods of getting that data over to us, which I will show. So just a whole slew of methods for data transfer: Globus, SFTP, FTP, various cloud services, mail, which is always an option, email, Dropbox, etc. And to briefly go over those methods, pros and cons. We have Globus, which we've been using, which is faster than SFTP, and there's no need for a paid subscription to push data to us. And what's really neat about the service is that interrupted transfers are resumed automatically. So this is really helpful for us because we can have those transfers running and there's less of a concern about, we don't have to start it over if the transfer fails. That does require configuration by your IT. And you will need a paid option for us, R2R, to pull the data from you. However, we are hoping to set up a push option that would allow you to drop data on our end, make your life easier and make our lives easier too, hopefully. Then there's SFTP, secure, quick transfer times, reliable. We will pull the data from you. That does require configuration on your end, but we don't have a space for you to push data to us. So that's just something to know. And again, various cloud download services. I'm sure each operator has different services that they prefer. The advantage of that is that we use our clone tool to pull all of that data and just makes those downloads a little more traceable on our end. The drawback with that is that if you're using those cloud download services, if there's an interruption, that can lead to losing files and starting your pull again, which is just a delay it's a delay for getting that data archived. So just something to consider, and can also cause some corruption of data down the line as well. And some may require a paid subscription. Then the classic one is the physical drive, just sending it by mail. And I think you can receive a lot of data at once, which is great, but not so great if you want to send this data frequently. And of course, there's always just going to be issues with mail. I mean, despite the fact that you may need to do it if you have an unreliable connection, but there could be issues with mail, data, if there's any data missing or there's something wrong with the data, the turnaround time is going to add an extra delay to the process. And once we receive the data, it does need to be mounted in person, which in the day of remote work and just people in different institutions, just extra time that we're not getting the data archived. So just something to consider. But some new stuff. We recently made live a new distro file request tool service where the users can now request any file or folder, files folder from the cruise data distribution. Just note that that is for everything that is not broken out as a file set already on the R2R page. So simply have to go to the R2R page, go to the request distro files button, fill out some basic information, and you should be able to select the file and directories that you would like. And once you send that request, me or Emily, probably, right, Emily? Say yes. Okay, never mind. She's on Zoom. She's also here in spirit, but she's in Zoom. And we'll deal with that request in maybe 3 to 4. Oh, yes. In maybe 3 to 4 business days. I don't know. Not on the weekends. And once we made that service live, we started getting requests right away. So we're really excited about the tool, and we're really keen on knowing what users are going to request and if there's any pattern in the types of files they're going to be requesting. We also have our API services, which will allow you to get information and data about cruises, devices, file manifests, file sets, documentation, etc. So using the tool, you can just use the tool page to get that information, or you can also use the URL to programmatically pull that information, which I think is a big help. So you can get the information you need sooner, and you may not need to reach out to us to get it at all. So I think that's getting that information as soon as possible is always our goal. We receive most of our funding from NSF, so we're very thankful to NSF for making our work possible. It is not as flashy, but it's really important to get that data in, archived, and available to the public. But we also want to thank our other sponsors as well for their support. And just a side note, we are hiring a systems analyst / programmer. So, there's a QR code on the right-hand side. So feel free to, if you want to search for a more detailed view of that. But as just a general summary, we need someone front-end, back-end, developing front, back-end applications with JavaScript, Python, and/or Java knowledge, troubleshooting, supporting phases leading to development, UI, UX, and just tool development as well. If you have any questions, any pressing questions you need to ask at this very moment, I'm all ears. I'm very excited to hear from them. But if you think of something later and none of us at the R2R team are available in person, please feel free to email the info@rv.us email, and we will try to get a response to you as soon as possible. You can also check our Twitter too if you want to. And also, just as a note, we will be here just during the breaks and during the lunch. So if anyone wants to have a conversation about like their data or just what R2R does in general, or you just want to get to know us really well, that's great. Please feel free.
Buy you a beer. No, I didn't say that.
Yes, feel free to reach out. We'd love to have a conversation and see how we can help you get the data to us. Thanks for your time, and any questions, please. Well, don't clap yet. I haven't gotten the questions yet.
Yeah, I can ask one. So in that file request tool, are you following links to harvest things from NCEI, or are you, because you would have already submitted them,
Mhm.
or you're, okay, just curious.
Oh, you have their mic. I don't have to repeat your question, right?
That's fine.
Okay.
Anybody else have a question?
Rafael, you showed us a kind of over time, the time to R2R, approaching zero. Is there another dimension about maybe completeness of metadata, or are you seeing kind of like improvements like that in your distro?
The question was, if we're seeing a different dimension of the improvement of the metadata over time.
Maybe that's not a problem.
I think I will say I'm a little green, so I'm going to give you my opinion based on my ingestion of the metadata itself. Is that we typically require a minimal amount of metadata in order to complete the ingestion. And if we don't have that, we can't really proceed. So once we have the minimum amount of data we need, we're usually good to go. So we don't really see like a difference as far as like an improvement on the metadata over time, but we are responsive to things that users would like to see when they go to our cruise page. So we try to accommodate that as much as possible. And we try to insert documentation as well for each cruise to make sure that the user can get as much information as they can. But it would be really good to have a clear metric to measure that and kind of see what kind of information the community would like to see. Yeah, of course.
What barriers do you see if the National Science Foundation and the State Department required foreign cruise operators who operated in the US EEZ to provide data to you via thumb drive or any other reasonable method? What impediments do you see that would prevent that data from being collected and being made useful rather than just paper reports?
Repeat the question.
Yeah. Just to make sure I have your question, what barriers do we see in receiving data in the EEZ outside of foreign?
So this would be a foreign research vessel.
Foreign research vessel.
Operating in the US EEZ is required to provide reports.
Foreign, just sorry, so I can repeat the question for the audience. A foreign vessel with the US EEZ. Okay. That question might be a little above my pay grade, actually. I'm not really sure. Suzanne, would you like to?
Just hand her the mic.
Oh,
Wait, Suzanne, he's going to hand you the mic. Sorry.
Hi, Suzanne.
Oh.
I don't think we have anything against doing that. The main issue we would need is a clear description of the vessels so that we can identify them and the cruise information. So the vessel would have to contribute that. And if it's a significant effort, it would be up to NSF to fund it. But we also, as you noticed before, some private vessels have chosen to participate and provided money. And for years, we've worked with the NCI, the NOAA boats, and we did some tests with them, and they started end-to-end based on our R2R, and we meet with them regularly to discuss it. So in theory, it would work. We just would need to have them meet the requirements in order to get into our database and be shared. And they would have to, if necessary, be funding to have our staff or expand our staff.
I'm going to have Rafael come and give that last sentence to the Zoom people because they have to hear it through this mic.
Hey, Zoom people. In a nutshell, RDR would be open to that, but you would require issues. There's issues with funding, and it would be a larger it is certainly doable, but it would be a lot of extra things with like manpower and funding that would be required.
Might be.
Hmm?
Might be.
Might. And
Yeah, let me just make something clear about funding. ONR pays 15% of R2R. So I know it's always to say NSF funds it, but it's a quite, and many of the things we've talked about today, the winch pools and the wire pool, ONR contributes to all these things at a 15% rate. So it's co-funded by NSF and ONR. So it's important to remember.
Thank you, Jim.
Jim wanted to emphasize that ONR also provides 15% of the funding, and so not just NSF. So just important to not forget that.
We all appreciate all of our funding.
We appreciate all of our funding.
We've got some more. We're not done. We got a couple of questions.
Oh, okay, wait.
Okay.
I was just playing it off. I was just grabbing it.
We have a question from Leah McRaven. When post-cruise data products are generated, how does R2R prefer scientists cite credit the R2R archive data set? I always list the cruise DOI, but I didn't know if you were able to track those metrics. And I should clarify, this is when I go to submit a data product.
Well, it's already written, but we want to strap the DOI. I feel like that would be, because that leads us directly to the cruise page that the user can then, the reader can then just find right away.
So that's adequate.
DOI is definitely would be the preferred method.
Okay, that's a clear answer.
We got another one.
Oh, you're popular.
Popular. There was a comment in the community tab. Perhaps there could be a monetary award via NSF grant. Hi, Jim. Each year to the vessel who gets data successfully ingested in the archive each year. If not monetary, perhaps an acknowledgement at RVTEC.
Ooh, swag.
That'd be a really cool idea. I think at the end of the day, operators are doing the best they can. We definitely just want to work with them to make sure that we can help them get the data to us as soon as possible. But definitely, I think a discussion about definitely like best practices and just best practices for not just the data itself, but the data transfer methods and what that's going to work for each institution, since they all have their own limitations they need to deal with.
Let's cut to Katie next. All right, we're going to move on to our last presenter before lunch. Thank you for sticking around for all the questions. Best practices, Katie Rogers. Now, wait, no, it's still with us.
Always with you. All right, sorry, folks, you're going to get a lot of me today. So I'm here to do an update on developing best practices for seagoing operations. We're going to do this a little differently than we've done in the past. Usually we'll have the working group leads give a lightning slide, but in order to stay within our time limits and keep Jules happy, we decided that I would just go ahead and do this presentation. But I wanted to start with a plug that we have a working session this afternoon at 2 p.m. With the best practices group. And then Seabird is also coming to do a Q&A at 3 p.m. So I'll show those at the end of the presentation. Am I entering or
Enter
space? Okay. So I wanted to start out with, as some of you may not be familiar with who we are and what we're doing and why we're doing it. Really, our ultimate goal is to get a group of scientists, data managers, marine technicians, all of you together to help develop best practices related to seagoing operations. Now, today you're going to hear a lot about sensors. But as we heard earlier in some of the sessions with the wire pool, for example, it seems like it would be great to bring this community together and develop a document for that specific purpose. And it sounds like in the managers meeting yesterday, there may have been some discussion about PCO2 systems and possibly creating a document for PCO2 systems as well. So you'll hear about all the active working groups today, but we are open to creating additional ones. And we have the community here with a wealth of knowledge that we want to get that information to you to really help kind of promote standardization throughout the fleet and improve data quality overall. So I want to first do a big shout out, and I know some of you folks are online. Hi, everybody online, to our working group leads. I am Katie Watkins-Brandt, by the way. I am the
new data acquisition manager at NOAA. We also have Kristen Beam, Sean Smith, Laura Stolp, Rebecca Hudak, Jules Hammond, Gabe Mattias. If you guys are here, could you just wave real quick? I know a lot of you are. Hey guys, you guys rock. And then we also have Jay Perlman and Mark Bushnell, and they are with OBPS, the Ocean Best Practices System. This is a great resource for the community. It's an online repository of best practice documents. The thing that's a little different about OBPS is a lot of them are really science focused. So the goal of this group was really to bring marine technicians on board to develop best practices for technicians by technicians. So that was really the overall goal, but they offer their support to us and they want our best practices in their repository. And they've been absolute wonderful supporters of ours. And then of course, marine technicians, all of you have been great in your involvement with the development of best practices in these working groups as well. So our approach, we are in this kind of red zone here where we have 4 active groups, really, culminating the information that's out there, gathering all the documentation, and then really in the development phase of the best practices. We have 4 active working groups, and you might say, wait, I thought you guys had 5. Well, we did. But what we ended up doing was combining the CTD profiler group and the oxygen sensor group, because we found there were a lot of synergies and thought it would be better if we just worked together to incorporate the CTD and SBE 43 best practices together. So teamwork makes the dream work. So we have combined those efforts, and Laura Stolp and Rebecca Hudak are the leads on those. We also have an EK80 Fisheries Sonar Suite group led by Kristen Beam and Rebecca Hudak, the General Flow-Through Systems led by Sean Smith, the ADCP led by Jules Hammond, and I'll go into each one of those briefly. Again, we're gonna have a whole session on this afternoon, so I'm just gonna go over this pretty quick, but if you want more details, there's a lot of great information we're gonna have this afternoon. So EK80 Fisheries Sonar Suite. They did take a brief break during active sailing season. Obviously, many of the members of these groups are marine technicians. You guys sail, you're busy. I should say this is all volunteer efforts. So we really appreciate your involvement and understand your time limitations and certainly respect that. They did do a couple calibrations, one on the Atlantis that was dockside in January 2022, and one on the Sekuliak that was underway in February of 2022. And there's a lot of tips and tricks they're going to share this afternoon, but there were challenges associated with both approaches for calibration, specifically with the site. Excuse me, I've been talking a lot these past few days, so my voice is very hoarse. Specifically with the location and certain features to look for. There are 13 members contributing, groups from, or people from NOAA, UNH, OSU, URI, and WHOI, and they do have a working draft of the EK80 best practices with a really strong focus on calibration, as well as settings and features to run to get the best quality data. General flow-through system. This is one of my favorites because it isn't about a specific sensor, it's about the system overall. And it's something I don't think we think about nearly enough in the fleet. Well, I think we do think about it enough because we started this group, but there's a lot of people asking questions about, what's the intake like, sea chest, what kind of piping should we use? What's what are the pumps, flow meters, debubblers? What should go in line first? What flow rates should we have? All of these questions have come up. So Sean Smith is our fearless leader in this group. It kicked off in September of 2021, and that is the primary scope to kind of focus on all of these the supporting infrastructure and components within the flow-through system. So not addressing specific sensors, but all of those other things that go along with it. Admittedly, we've been dormant for most of 2022, but plan to kind of restart in 2023. And some new topics have come up since we've started, and that's really focused on intakes. How do we document that? Documenting the intake location, the pipe runs, whether or not, so we can really get a good handle on, residence times and things like that. Anybody who knows me knows I could talk your ear off about this. This is like, I really enjoy chatting about this. So if you want to talk about any supporting infrastructure for science seawater systems, I'm happy to talk about it some more too. But one of the things that was really important that we came up with was that, you know, we really do need representation from engineering groups on the different ships because this is so, you know, intricate to the ship and understanding the ship. So anybody within engineering groups or know of anybody who would be interested in participating, please let us know. It's going to be important contribution. The ADCP. So there was a review of what's already in the ocean best practices system and existing documentation on ADCP vessel mounted systems. Within the repository, and there's a Go Ship manual as well. They added and continued improvement of a best practices page in the UHDAS documentation. So the old version was the VMDAS recommendations, with the new being the UHDAS best practices. Jules is resigning from any role in the ADCP best practices except to lurk when time permits.
Thank you.
So with that said, though, there is an opportunity for someone to step in and carry on the development of documentation for other configurations. So lowered and moored ADCPs from ships. So please feel free to reach out to me and let me know if you are interested in herding cats and if that's something that you would like to take on. The CTD Profiler Group. This is led again by Laura Stolp and Rebecca Hudak. The meeting started in September of 2021, created an index of documents in OBPS and other institutes. So again, doing that review of what existing documentation exists. We have 19 interested participants. The participation varies from month to month, again, because we're all just busy. But we certainly welcome anybody new who'd like to come in as well. And our goals, again, were, you know, combining with the oxygen group because there were so many synergies and overlap. We have a one-pager reference for data collection and cleaning, and this is something we'll present this afternoon. It's one of the things we've really tried to do is no marine technician has time to sit down and read a 20-page document while they're out at sea. That's just not realistic. So it's really coming up with ways that we can provide you with quick documents that you can easily reference and grab and be able to understand in terms of maintenance and management and other things, what you can do to help improve data quality while you're out at sea. So we're going to present some of those documents this afternoon and having an appendix for related documents and technical references. Again, Seabird will be here for a Q&A this afternoon. I don't know if Heather Eberhardt is here or not in the room, probably not. She's been phenomenal. She's actually been joining our group meetings, the last two with the CTD group, and just there to really figure out what the community wants in terms of software updates and really with a focus on QA/QC. What tools can they provide to help improve the methods for evaluating QA/QC while you're out at shore, and then updated cleaning procedures as well. So I strongly encourage you guys to attend that session, which I believe is at 3 p.m. So every year we participate in Ocean Best Practices Workshop Update, and that just happened last October. We, as I said, continue to have OBPS support, and they are actually working towards an endorsement process for us. What that means is that once we submit these best practices to OBPS, they have a group that actually endorses them. So it really, what it does is it helps get the word out there. It gives us that endorsement. We get more recognition for that practice. And ultimately that leads to standardization and making it widely adopted and used in the fleet. So we've been working on that with them. And then of all things, a task team on decision trees. I don't know how I get myself into these things sometimes, but decision trees, right? I mean, you would think that they would be very straightforward, but there's a lot that goes into it. So we actually created a task team to develop recommendations for and templates of decision trees. that target various interests in the OBPS community. One of those being our group with the marine technicians, and thinking about how we design a effective decision tree for things like time-based recommendations. When you're out at sea and you're limited and you say, I got 5 minutes, I can do this. I've got 10 minutes, I can do this. So really thinking about how to do that and make it the most effective tree that you can. And creating a best practice for decision trees. And then again, those templates for users to be able to grab and create their own decision trees. But again, keeping that same template and that same format. So everybody in the community is used to seeing that, right? So it's easy, it's a little easier for them to adopt and widely use. Again, this is just one last plea for the RVTEC breakout sessions we have this afternoon. The best practices update is at 1400. I think the auditorium is here.
Yep.
Okay, we're here. And we'll have the EK80 general flow through, the CTD group, but also Leah McRaven, who's online, is going to do a CTD data session where she has some magnificent plots to kind of show what contamination looks like, what you should be looking for. So that's pretty exciting. And then again, the CTD software breakout, again, here at 1500. And then tomorrow there's a Marine Met crash course with Samos at 1300 in room 107. My last slide is, hopefully I'm on time. Okay. My last slide is really just a plea to get more participation. If you are interested in joining any of these groups, if you're interested in starting your own wire pool or PCO2, this is really not meant to just be for sensors. This is seagoing operations. So when we initially did the survey of what people were interested in, there was a lot more than just sensors. It was the winches and everything else. So if you are interested in starting a group, I wholeheartedly support your efforts, and feel free to reach out to me and I'd be happy to get that all started. And if you're interested in joining any of the active working groups, please reach out to the leads or myself and I'll get you in contact with who you need to be in contact with. Otherwise, that's it, and I'll take questions if you got them. Ethan. Hi.
For your oxygen group, it's like it said it's focusing on the Seabird sensor. And I would encourage you to think about expanding that to optodes.
Yes, and I will say, Ethan said he would encourage expanding the oxygen sensor to not only the SB43, but also optodes as well, other optodes. So within our CTD best practices group, I think that is going to be addressed in the technical references and kind of the ancillary sensor information. But Laura and Becca would probably be better to answer that. But I believe that we are going to have some sections related to that, kind of all the ancillary sensors that kind of fall under CTD profilers. They have a great list, ongoing list of that, of the various sensors throughout the fleet. Anybody else? Chris.
Not yet.
Well, you know, yeah, there's the wiki. So shout out to Kevin back there. So I know he said that, you know, that's not a repository for best practices, but there are quite a few already existing best practices. And that's one of the things we tried to do, is evaluate what's already out there and kind of prioritize some of the big hitters right now. But yeah, I did briefly take a look at that wiki, and it's a great resource. Yeah. Alice.
Hi, I just want to say this is awesome what you guys are doing, and I encourage people, I know everyone has your own ways of doing things, but I encourage people to have a look. We've got a lot of new younger technicians, and you know, yes, you've learned your one way from your institution, but you know, maybe there are better ways to do it. So talk to Katie, look at their website, and look at it. It's really great. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Yes, and we try to bring in not only marine techs, but scientists and data managers and engineers as well, because it really means if we bring in all of these different opinions, we're going to come out with a better product that is more widely adopted by the community. And we want everybody's suggestions for sure. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to restate Alice's accolades for the best practices group to say that all of you out there could probably learn something by reading some of these best practices and expanding your knowledge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any other questions? Are there Hoover questions? No? Okay, so just a shout out for these guys. How about a yay? So we got lunch right now, followed by at 1400 in here, ocean best practices, and in room 107, shore-based teleoperation of deep submergence ocean exploration vehicles aboard U.S. academic research fleet, and in 106, MARSAM synthetic coring and NSF wire pool. And then a break at 1450. And then CTD stuff in here and building a field safety toolkit for respectful and inclusive work environment in 107, sponsored by Emily Shimada and Gabe and Maria Oshabash from MATE. And then in 106, Josh from Hui and the East Coast Wire Pool, and Masako is going to be also in 106. Randy has something.
For our breakouts this afternoon, I have sent a couple of messages and I've been asked a couple of times, so I just want to say out loud at least once. If your device will output HDMI and you can log into Hoover, you can use your own device. If you can't do that, let me know. We're going to have one person in each room to help. And we only have 2 USB-C to HDMI out dongles for Macs. So, yeah, John.
I have one.
Oh, great. Okay, good. Okay. Well, if you come ask me, I have 2. So if you need one, it might be a good idea to hook up with somebody and secure one. Yeah, go ahead, Lance.
Are the breakout sessions being recorded?
Yes, that's why you need to be able to get into the Hoover, because you need to share your screen with the people who are online. And we need you to get on the HDMI so that you can hear them if they ask questions. Yes.
We have our 1300 satcoms here, right?
Yes, we have one more session before the breakouts after lunch. SatNag, CIWG, High Seas Net.
Oh, yes, there's a whole session. Whoops. That's me not having had breakfast.
Any other questions? Okay, awesome.
Yes.
Well, I will be here.
Lunch sessions and then.
I will be in this room during lunch if
Thank
you
you, sir.
need to ask questions or test your tech. Okay. Thank you.